I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives, from our interpersonal relationships, our marriages, our relationships at work, our politics, our community relations, everything. Everything is dependent upon good character. And if you'll go to my blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com, either URL will take you to the same place, you'll find several articles related to that. We've got a series going now on relationships. And I just posted an article kind of late. Usually my articles post on Friday. But once again, I was traveling. I was in sunny Southern California, which wasn't very sunny the first 2 days, all last week, doing workshops once again, and actually loving it. The audiences, the attendees were remarkable in their receptivity. I so enjoyed doing the workshops in California. The only thing I don't really like is I don't really like the fact, because I live outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, and because we're a relatively small community here, and which I like, don't get me wrong, we're just the right size. We have all the big city amenities, but we are not overcrowded, and we don't have the traffic, and we don't have a lot of the other things that come along with overcrowded places. And we have incredible natural beauty here. Now, don't get any ideas. I don't want anybody else moving here. We like things just the way they are. If we get overrun with people who discover paradise here, then it won't be paradise anymore. You know how that goes. But to make a long story short, what I don't like about coming back from California is, given the 2-hour time difference, I have to start out, well, the first thing is I can't get back here. I can't get back home the same day that I finish my workshops, because I finish my workshops in the late afternoon, and that's already the evening time this time. And so by the time I would get out of my host city in California and then back to a hub where there's always a layover, there's no chance to get into the Little Rock Airport before it closes, before there's no service. So, it's just the way it is. I have to spend another day and then get up early and travel. And these days, especially with certain airlines, I'm not going to mention them, but there are two airlines in particular that I almost hate to fly because it's always something. You never know what it's going to be, but it's always something. It's either a problem with the crew, a problem with the plane, a problem with the weather, a problem with finding a window to not to launch, but to take off. There's always something. And this last time, it was everything. So, on top of the fact that I had to spend an extra day, I had to get up very, very early in the morning to travel to the airport. And LAX is under terminal revision. It's always being updated. And I got there just barely in time, given having to drop off the rent car and all that stuff, taking the shuttle to the right terminal. I got there just in time. And then, of course, it started. First, there was an issue, no plane. Then they had to get us a plane. Then there was a problem with the plane. Then they had to get us a crew. And then there was another mechanical issue that they thought they could get around, but that required us to fly at a different altitude. And then that required more fuel for the plane. So, to make a long story short, I was going to get back at least at a reasonable time on the extra day yesterday, but with a 2.5 hour delay in taking off, I missed my connecting flight and had to wait for another flight on which there was a seat. So by the time I'd gotten home, I was up 17 hours. And I was pretty darn tired. So it wasn't exactly the best experience. What made it a great experience was the receptivity of the attendees at my conferences, and I really do appreciate that. And I invite anybody who wants to call into the program. I make mention at each one of my programs, at each one of my workshops, that folks can call in. Professionals always have good stories to tell about dealing with certain character issues, or even if they're looking for some advice on a particular case, is always of interest to the audience. So I invite them to call in, and I invite you to call in too. You want to join the conversation tonight? The number to call is 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. If you want to Skype, the Skype address is George K. Simon, GeorgeKSimon. And I think that I can patch you in that way also. So whether you want to call in at 501-258-8326 or Skype in at George K. Simon, I'm happy to take your call and patch you in. Happy to have you join the conversation. Well, tonight we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're particularly going to focus on relationships and character because I've got a series going on now on the blog where I'm writing about it. And one of the things I've been talking about is the fact that, relationships in our day and time, they tend to be two things. They tend to be relatively superficial as far as intimacy is concerned. And they tend not to last. Marriages especially. Marriages break up, fall apart at an unprecedented rate in our day in our day and time, over half of all marriages fail. And the statistics, by the way, are not very good on this. You would think just logically that a person might learn enough about their relationship failure in their first failed marriage that they're better able the second time around to make a good go of things. But the statistics say people don't get better at this. As a matter of fact, the chances that your second marriage will not hold together are worse than your first one. And the same with the third one. It's almost like people not only don't learn, but they make not only the same mistakes twice, but even more mistakes the second and the third time. That's at least what the statistics say. And there's got to be a reason for that. And of course, you know, my view on things is always that it comes down to character. So one of the things I've been writing about is in how to assess the necessary character variables on the front end when you get into a serious relationship, especially a relationship as serious as marriage. How to judge appropriately the character of your potential relationship partner, and then how to basically be aware of your own character. Because it takes two individuals to make a relationship work. And the only way that it's going to work is if both individuals in the relationship have at least the minimum character requirements to make it work. And unfortunately, these days, that's just not always the case. Maybe you've got some experiences to share about this. Maybe you've even read the blog article that I posted this past, I actually posted it early this morning. That's the latest I've posted it. Believe me, folks, I would have posted it yesterday if I could have. I would have posted it Friday if I could have. But my touring schedule was just so tight. There was just no room. So, but if you want to join the conversation tonight, if you've got a story to share about a relationship that fell apart and why you think it did and the character issues involved, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, as I mentioned in the article that posted just this morning, it takes two to make a relationship work. And you have to bring a certain amount of character to the relationship for it to have a chance. And then you also have to be able to appropriately judge the character of your relationship partner. And what I have found in my years and years as a therapist, what I have found is that there are two things that impair a person's ability to correctly assess the potential for success in their relationship. The first thing is that they don't rightly judge the character of their prospective partner. And there can be a couple of different reasons for this. Sometimes the partner is really skilled in the art of what we call impression management. In other words, they really know how to put this great face on and really look great at the outset of a relationship. They can make themselves so endearing, so attractive in so many ways. They know how to seduce, how to charm, how to turn on the charm. And you only realize what they're really like after the jig is up, so to speak. Many times that charm is turned on just so they can basically nab and possess you within the relationship. In other words, once they feel that they have your commitment and your loyalty, then there's no need anymore to put on airs. There's no need anymore to fake it. There's no need to put that best face on. They can be who they really are. And then when you find out who they really are, it can be a real shock. It can be a real shock. I say in my books, it's like getting whiplash. You know what's happened to you after the damage has already been done. You don't know on the front end. And that's a really sad thing. And it happens so many times in relationships these days. But the other thing that can happen outside of the relationship partner being so skilled at the art of impression management and deceiving you about who they really are, the other thing that can happen is that people can be in a substantial amount of denial about, or they can even deliberately ignore a lot of the clear warning signs for trouble ahead, a lot of the clear risk factors. And the number one risk factor is trouble in a prior relationship. You know, there's no single better predictor of future behavior than past behavior. The research is clear about this. People develop ways of coping, ways of seeing the world and dealing with the world, stereotypic preferred ways of living their lives that are remarkably stable over time. They don't really change very much without a whole heck of a lot of external pressure. So the best single predictor of how someone is going to relate to you is what the character of their relationship was prior. And, you know, so many times these days, because divorce especially is so frequent, you meet somebody that's already had one or two failed relationships. And you delude yourself into thinking that that relationship failed just because they were with the wrong partner. They just didn't choose wisely. But it'll be different between you and them. It'll be way different because you're not the same person that their relationship partner was. And besides, because it was all that relationship partner's fault, because it wasn't a good fit, so to speak, it's going to be different. It's going to be a lot better between you and that person. At least that's what you delude yourself into thinking. But you're ignoring the biggest risk factor that there is. If a person has already one or two failed relationships in the past, the chances are they had a lot to do with that themselves. And unless they've done some very serious soul searching and some very serious growing and changing, unless they've done that, the risk is still present that the same thing's going to happen again. And so it's delusional to think that you'll be just that right relationship partner that will make a difference. Everybody has a role to play. And they likely had a lot to do with the failure of that relationship. And they're likely to pose the same kind of risks to your relationship with them. But folks want to ignore this. So that's why I've written about it. And you can see the first of the articles. It's an introductory article on the blog at manipulative-people.com. Or, if you wish, drgeorgesimon.com. That's DRGEORGEK Simon at drgeorgesimon.com. It is Either URL will take you to the same place, to my blog, and I'm happy to say that there are hundreds of timely articles on this blog that will clue you into all aspects of character disturbance and how to deal with the difficult people in your life, how to understand those relationships that went south and why they did, etc., etc. The blog is a perfect companion to my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller on manipulation and how covertly aggressive people operate, how they manage to get the better of you. And then my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, the seminal book on all character disturbances, from narcissism to psychopathy, sociopathy, to all the various antisocial other personality types that are likely to cause you a problem. And also character disturbance clues you into what you would have to find in the way of appropriate help in order to get the kind of help that you need if you go looking for it. Because otherwise you're going to experience what most people call therapy-induced trauma, where you go for help and instead of getting help, you end up feeling worse in some way. So that's my book, Character Disturbance, well worth your read. And then my only book from the Christian faith perspective, The Judas Syndrome, which also details how a life of genuine faith can truly transform a person. And then my book, How Did We End Up Here? Co-authored with my wonderful friend, Dr. Kathy Armistead. This book is the relationship partner survival guide in this character disordered world of ours. How to survive and thrive in a character disordered world. That's what How Did We End Up Here is all about. And I'm going to be releasing my fifth and probably last book sometime this summer, again with Dr. Kathy Armistead, my co-author, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. This book was many years in the process. I allude to the 10 Commandments of Character in a chapter of my book, Character Disturbance. I write a little bit about them. The essential life lessons that somebody has to learn in order to turn out with decent character. And you can find in my upcoming book, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life, a much more detailed explanation about what those essential life lessons are and how we have to learn them. And the fact is that we have to learn them at some point at any age. I know it's more ideal to learn these lessons early. It would be nice to enter young adulthood already having learned these lessons so that you enter young adulthood with the character necessary to forge and nurture and maintain really strong, decent, intimate relations. But the fact is that most folks are not growing up until they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, sometimes even in their 60s. These days, it's just the nature of our time. It's the nature of our culture and the values, the predominant values in our culture. So the fact is that these 10 essential life lessons that have to be learned are lessons that would need to be learned at any age for an individual to function with decency of character. So the 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life, will likely be my last work. And we will likely release it sometime this summer. So I am very hopeful that that it is released this summer, and I'm very hopeful that it receives the warm reception that my other books have. Frankly, I think it will be the best thing I've ever written. And it certainly will be, whether or not others agree that it is the best thing I've ever written, it certainly will be the most important work that I've written. Even more important than the most popular book I've written, In Sheep's Clothing. Because there's nothing more important to our world right now than character. There's nothing more important to our world right now. This is a very risky time. All it takes is one deranged person with a particular mindset and the right amount of plutonium at their disposal, or the right contrived weapon that they've put together, or that somebody has put together for them, to do incredible damage. If we don't solve our character problem, we don't survive. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. I was reading an article in the paper the other day where somebody, I think it was, yes, it was Stephen Hawking, the famous astrologist, not astrologist. That's not, is that right? Astronomer and physicist. Famous scientist. Let's put it that way so I don't get that wrong. He was saying that we have perhaps 100 years to colonize someplace else because our path is so destructive on this planet. The likelihood is that we will do something to make it uninhabitable here. And so that if human life is to survive, fairly evolved, scientifically educated folks will need to be someplace else. They will need to have colonized another place in the universe. Otherwise, human life is probably not going to exist. Now, who knows if Dr. Hawking is correct? But I understand why people are thinking this way. Because we live in a time where we have so much knowledge about so many things, including knowledge about things that can destroy us, can truly destroy everything. And we unfortunately have too many folks among us of the kind of character that would willingly and without compunction engage in certain behaviors that could easily cause mass destruction. It's so sad. It's so sad, but it's the reality in which we live today. So that's why I think this upcoming book is so important. None of us is born civilized. And we have to get beyond just the moral values and rules and principles that keep us civil. We have to get beyond that. There is a greater law. And that law is the law of love. And that law has to be embedded in a human heart. And it doesn't come naturally, and it doesn't come easily. You see, we're kind of hardwired to do whatever it is to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves. We're not hardwired to keep ourselves open and vulnerable and to connect with other people, even people who offend us in some way, to connect with them in non-threatening, open ways, to allow ourselves to remain vulnerable. But that's the call, and that will be the saving grace, if you will, for the future. You know, this is the time of the year where I enjoy getting so many requests from individuals out there who want to perform the song that you hear at the beginning and the end of the program. My wife and I wrote this song back in 1999. I composed the music. I say I composed the music. I didn't. I was just the first person that God played this melody to. Maybe I wasn't even the first person, but I'm certainly the person who took pen and put it to paper, because I was literally obsessed with this tune that was planted in my brain. It wouldn't leave me alone. Over and over and over again, I'd hear it in the car, in the shower, in the bed, in every single way. I'd hear it. And you see, its message has to do with individual responsibility to live out the ideals that we profess. And that will help make us great again. And to amplify on that, it's all about character. It's all about each one of us taking our responsibilities seriously and taking our obligations to each other seriously, about having a sense of community, that we're all in this together, and that we're all either going to prosper together or we're going to perish together. And it's all about doing our part to make it all work. Unfortunately, the messages that we get from our culture is pretty much every person for themselves. Get what you can while you can. Make as much money as you can. Do what you can to advance and fulfill yourself. And let everybody else fend for themselves. So long as the opportunity is there, it's nobody else's responsibility. Certainly, we don't want to spoon feed people. Certainly, we don't want to do their work for them. We don't want to relieve them of their responsibilities. And so that's the predominant attitude. That's the predominant attitude. The problem is this: we have to live with one another. And right now, the divide between those who have much and those who do not have very much at all, the divide is greater than it has ever been since the 1920s. And that was a very, very difficult time. As a matter of fact, when you look at the unfortunate nature of American history, that dynamic was at play for much of our history, with that gap being there, not just between rich and poor, but between the haves and the have-nots in many other respects. And the only thing that changed that was the conclusion of World War II, in which the spoils of war had introduced a level of economic prosperity that no other country who participated in the war saw, but that we saw with unprecedented degree. And so the baby boom generation witnessed a vibrance in the economy, a boon of unprecedented proportion that expanded the fortunes of the middle class to a point that was unprecedented in American history. We had the most populous, thriving, invigorated middle class that the world had ever seen. And over the past several decades, that robust middle class has been shrinking. And now what we have, unfortunately, among us are those upper and middle class and upper class individuals. Very, very few middle class and a lot more lower middle class and lower class, at least economically, individuals. And it's a situation that can't be sustained. It just can't be sustained. There's too much misery. There's too much feeling left out. So here we are rolling into one of the first patriotic holidays where this song is often performed. And I've had a couple of requests already for folks to have the music so that they can perform at one of their church sponsored venues, performances, events, or some other event tied to Memorial Day, where we commemorate those who paid the greatest price for the preservation of freedom. But I really hope and pray that even more folks will request either the tracks, the orchestral tracks, or the musical score for this song, and help carry its message, because its message really needs to get out there. And the message is, what makes us really great, what has always made us really great, is not our military might or our economic clout. That's what we like to tout, but that's never what made us really great. In those times, those shining times of greatness that we so desperately need again, what really makes the difference is character. What really makes the difference are those folks who live out, not just preach, but live out our best ideals, and who show the responsibility and the character that make it possible for freedom to survive. Freedom and character are entirely interdependent. You give people of good character the maximum freedom to to pursue their dreams and to prosper. And they'll do fantastic things, not just for themselves, but for the community at large. But you give that same freedom to individuals of poor or impaired character, and there's trouble, big trouble. They abuse the freedom. They take advantage of the opportunities. And they take advantage of those opportunities in a negative way. There's always an invitation on government's part to restrict freedoms when people of poor character abuse those freedoms. It just so happens that when I was doing my workshop in San Bernardino, California this past week, someone pointed out that just outside the window of the conference room in which I was speaking, just outside the window, across the courtyard, was the site of the San Bernardino shooting, the San Bernardino terror tragedy that occurred a few years ago. It was a sobering realization. I was standing only a few feet away at one point from the very spot where this took place. And it kind of sent a chill up and down my spine. I thought to myself, just what has happened to us? Found myself asking the question. And of course, in my workshops, I spoke to it. And one of the things that attendees were quick to comment on is how much has changed culturally that has influenced, in a negative way, individuals' character development. And then we also talked about how, unfortunately, because so many people in our society today are struggling with character impairments, how that has affected our overall culture and our values and our norms, and especially those institutions that have been with us for decades, for eons actually, and that were designed to foster character, and how those cultural institutions have eroded. And I pointed out to my workshop attendees what a classic vicious cycle this is, where you have cultural decline because of so many character impaired individuals inhabiting the culture. And then you have character decline because of cultural institution decline. It's a classic vicious cycle. And the pendulum has to swing back. And it will. It may not do so really quickly, but I think it will, and relatively soon. Because we have reached the point now where one truly defective character could do so much damage. Like I said earlier, with just the right bomb-making plans and with just the right amount of plutonium, one deranged mind could successfully terrorize the earth. We live in very trying times. Very trying times indeed. And if ever there were a time for character, it's now. And so one humble way that I try to advance that and try to send the message, spread the message about character and its importance. Of course, I try to do that with my blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com. And I try to do that with my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, that in-depth study of all the various disturbed characters out there. The Judas Syndrome, my only book written for the Christian faith community and from the Christian faith perspective. And then my book, How Did We End Up Here, with Dr. Kathy Armistead, the survivor's guide, the guide for relationship partners, the guide to how to survive and thrive in this character disordered world of ours. And then my upcoming book, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. In addition to all of these things, I have this song that you're going to hear again at the close of the program. And its message is simple. It's very straightforward. If you listen carefully, you'll hear the message. America's greatness resides not in its military might, of which it has substantial military might, and it does not reside either in its economic clout. It is an economic powerhouse. GDP in China will surpass us fairly soon, but they have, 9 times our population. There is nothing quite like the United States that the world has ever seen in history with regard to economic clout. We truly are an economic wonder of the world. But that's still not where our true greatness has ever lied. It's never been in our military might, which is substantial, or our economic clout. Our real greatness has always been in the character of our people, which relates to our collective character. Even though he never truly said it, de Tocqueville is credited with saying that America is great because it is good, and when it ceases being good, it'll cease being great. And that's a wonderful quote, even if he never said it. It's a wonderful quote because it's true. We're great when we're good. And when we cease being good, as we've been ceasing over these past several decades, we'll cease being great. It's just that simple. We have a president now who tells us that he wants to make America great again. And how he's going to do that, he says, is he's going to protect us from foreign ill will, from terrorism, and he's going to rebuild our economic prowess so that we have more than just economic clout again. We enjoy a lot of economic prosperity. Well, he probably has at least some point. And who knows whether he'll be able to accomplish his goals. Because as far as character goes, we have an individual who is our leader who has some pretty significant character problems of his own. It's true, I would not go on record on any of the talk shows that I've been on, any of the news broadcasts that I've been on. I would not go on record, and I did not go on record even in the periodical articles that came out, even though I was misquoted either in Psychology Today, in Vanity Fair, or in the Atlantic. I would not go on record as saying our president had a personality disorder. That's unethical. But the features of narcissism that rile people do not take a PhD in either rocket science or psychology to deduce. Those features are clearly evident. And so even though he promises that we will be great again, if he succeeds with his agenda, his practical agenda for quote unquote saving America and for making it quote great end quote again, what will really make us great again is when we're great in character, when we're not killing each other in the streets, when our marriages are not failing more than half the time, when our work environments are not so toxic that we're either under constant threat of being severed or we're facing a constant desire to find something else. Character indeed matters. It matters more than anything. And when we make it matter again, things will change. Things will turn around. And I invite you to go to the blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com. Either URL will take you there. And begin reading the articles that will be forthcoming on why relationships fail. Because character, once again, is at the heart of it all. We have to bring a certain amount of character to the relationship for it to work. And we also have to be able to appropriately judge and demand a certain level of character in our relationship partner, or it's not going to work. It's just simply not going to work. It's just that simple. There has to be a foundation. And for most folks, that foundation is in the basic principles of human decency. But there is a greater law, a greater purpose, a higher order to living. And that's the law of love. Getting outside of ourselves, seeing that big picture, that grand scheme, this wondrous gift of creation, this incomprehensibly beautiful, marvelous thing that gives us life and sustains our life. Who could not be in absolute awe and wonder except the most vain, self-centered individuals among us? Who could not be in absolute awe and wonder of this vast, beautiful, incredible, almost impossible to comprehend creation that we are just a small part of? And if in love we strive to find our place, and we strive to do our part to make it all whole and well, then we will be great and we will do great things. And that's really the underlying message of the song that you're going to hear play once again as the program ends. And I invite all those folks visiting the page on the blog that talks about the song, and all of those thinking about either performing it or having it performed by someone else, either to some accompaniment or as a solo piece, it is a performance piece. I would encourage all of those to contact me. It does my heart a world of good to know that someone else wants to carry the message. To those of you who have already written in and expressed a desire to perform on Memorial Day the song affectionately known as America My Home, formerly titled Anthem for the Millennium. To all of you who have already written in and expressed that desire, my sincere thanks to you. I couldn't be happier, not because it just flatters me to know that you want to sing it, but it's heartening to know that someone wants to help carry this all-important message that I think the song carries with it. We'll be great again collectively when we're great again individually and in character. Our national character is dependent upon the character of our inhabitants. It's just that simple. When we're good, when we seek the greater good, when we nurture depth and intimacy in our relationships, in our marriages, when we reveal them, hold them together, and we bring those same attitudes into play when we're raising our children, so that we raise children who have respect for the time-honored principles that can make a country great. When we do all that, we will be great again. But in this narcissistic, self-indulgent, morally relativistic age of ours, we tend to simply pursue what immediate pleasures we can get for ourselves and let everything else go. Our conscientiousness ends with just ourselves and our immediate wants, desires, and pleasures. And no great society endures with mindsets like that. It's the recipe for disaster and the recipe for decline. That's just the cold, hard truth. So, once again, I invite you, when the program ends and this song plays, I invite you to pay really close attention, not just to each individual word, but to the sentiment in the song. It was truly an inspiration. It will not be your theme song for very much longer. The program is evolving, and it's moving in new directions. It's going to take a much more spiritually grounding tour, a much more spiritually grounded turn in the near future. So I ask you, listen with attendance, listen with an open heart, feel the sentiment behind the lyrics. It's up to each and every one of us to honor the traditions that made us great. And we will be great again. With that, I'm Dr. George Simon. Thank you for tuning in. Join me again next week for another edition of Character or Men. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
America, my home. America, America, may God bless America and
Truth on the Tracks you can catch every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time